welcome you to Simply Reports through the lens of research for strategic questions. Tutorial overview. So in today's tutorial, we are going to first make sure you can log into Simply Reports. Darcy already have managed to, so that's great. We're going to give a quick orientation of the tabs in Simply Reports, learn a research framework and a set of steps to break questions down in Simply Reports. We'll learn how to put the frame and the steps into effect and then run some reports. And then we're going to explore the varied uses and purposes of report data. Put this all into effect. So first steps, logging into Simply Reports. Follow the bit.ly / NLLS Simply Reports to get to the domain. And then you can use your username as capital NL \N, your library code, all capitalized, the first letter of your name, and then the last, or your entire last name. The password is going to be whatever password you use to sign into Microsoft and Polaris. Okay. So just a quick Simply Reports overview of a list and count report. We're not going to use list reports today, but we will use the count reports. Okay, so each of the tabs in Simply Reports pulls data from the record form in Polaris, such as an item form or a patron form. You'll see patrons, patron account, holds, items, bibs, authorities. You might not see all of the same tabs as what I have here because I have quite a few, and it'll depend on your permissions, but you'll see a couple of those different tabs up there. Each one of those tabs in the list and count reports here has this little box of report output columns, and each one of these categories in this box correlate to the categories in the record forms in Polaris. So if you can see, if you were to pull item assign branch in a report, it's going to pull the information found right here on this item, and then any other information you pull from here. So you can pull title and assign branch, and it'll say, what does it say? Halloweener, owned by, it's great name, owned by Northern Lights Library System. The next set of reports in Simply Reports that we're going to be focusing on a lot today, so I'm going to just give a really brief coverage of it, is the statistical reports. So these reports are not pulled from the Polaris record forms, but rather pulled from the transactional database, and so they look different from the list and count reports. You don't have as much flexibility in creating your own report when using statistical reports. As shown here, you only have a drop-down menu to select your categories. However, these reports pull ephemeral data that is often not possible to pull with count or list reports. The best way I can describe ephemeral data is that if this data was pulled from the item record forms in Polaris, it would be constantly overwritten. So it would be a lot of data, and that data wouldn't exist over time very easily. Okay, so we've done a quick orientation of Simply Reports. So take a step back and determine what purpose Simply Reports has in library research. How does it help you answer questions, such as strategic questions? If you're asking a question, you probably want an outcome, such as determining scope, setting milestones, enabling comparisons, or tracking progress. So the next step is learning how to use Simply Reports to collect the data that will underpin these outcomes. Ooh. That was exciting. Setting up a simple research framework will help you break down each of your questions into an actionable plan. So for the purpose of this tutorial, we have started with a few strategic goals that we then broke down into questions, which we then break further down into Simply Reports to give you a bit of a structure on how to approach this data collecting process. To help us break down both the goals and the questions, we will be using 3 questions to establish a framework. So what information do you need? What do you already have? And how do you measure progress over time? So our first just general, very broad goal. So this is just, let's say, a strategic goal. We kind of imagined that you might get from your board and then have to implement. we're going to start breaking it down using our framework. So create a desirable place to be. This is a big thing to measure. So what information do you need? Hopefully you might have some questions that you're thinking about, but we decided to create a few of our own just to like give you an idea of how this is going to work. One question we came up with is how many items do our patrons check out from our shelves as opposed to putting items on holds? We can find that data. So just start thinking about how best to break this question down into Simply reports. We're going to start highlighting the measuring parts of this question. First, we see items, and then we also see holds. Our next word we see is check out. And so we're going to highlight all of these because they are pointing us to a very specific form of report, which is statistical reports. Just a reminder, the statistical reports pull data from the transactional database rather than the Polaris database, which is a snapshot. This data is ephemeral, so it's checkouts, things that are quick. There's a lot of them and they disappear quickly because one item can be checked out by multiple people multiple different times at various dates. That data is kind of hard to encapsulate and hold. So these reports get you that data. There's checkouts, shipped holds, satisfied holds, all of those kinds of things that travel. Okay, so the question was, how many items do our patrons check out from our shelves as opposed to holds? These were the 3 reports that I broke down. One of them is that you're going to want to know the library checkouts by assigned branch. You're going to want to know your own library. You're going to get your total library checkouts, and then you're going to get total holds to see how many holds were checked out at your library. We're starting in the items tab because we had highlighted items, and then we are going to move into the item statistical reports. Beautiful. Okay, so for this report, the very first one, which is checkouts by assigned branch, we are going to go into the statistical categories and use the drop-down menu and select checkout. When you drop down that menu, that is the extent of reports you can choose for a statistical report, so a little bit more limited, but checkouts is very clear and easy.
I like that window setting.
Yeah, it's honestly the most useful.
Yes.
In available subcategories, you will then select item assigned branch. You're going to leave report type and detail level as is, so you don't need to click on those. And then you're going to go down to transacting branch and choose your library. And then you're going to go a little bit further down to where it says date range or relative date. And here you can pick whatever date you want. I really like to just use relative date, and I put 1, and then I use the drop-down menu and I do years. And it's just going to do from today's date all the way back 1 year until exactly a year from today.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and next step is you go down into that item statistical report filters. You might have to blow it up. I didn't take a picture of that, sorry. And you're going to click off the library quick pick and branch, and then select your library again. Next step with all of these, to run a statistical report, you have to check off, and I forget to do this all the time, run report now checkbox in the upper right hand corner of your screen. It'll give you a pop-up, just press OK. It's a big scary warning. It's not that scary, I promise. Otherwise, it'll give you zeros and you'll think that you have nothing. This just gives you a notification that these reports take a bit of energy to run, and so it wants to kind of like act as like a, hey, don't run these all the time kind of measure.
There's very little that you would be able to break with your individual library.
It's more of a warning for like me pulling things, because I'll pull for every single library I track at the same time. Yeah, you won't break a single thing. So now you can click submit. So for this, we didn't do any extra kind of like screens, but you can write that number down, or you can download this. I do have screens on saving the parameters, but we'll get there. So we're going to do total checkouts next. Technically, you're going to see the exact same number, I think, because we're just removing that. You can leave everything the exact same except for that one available subcategories to just active summary, because then it just gives you a total tally. What we would see, and I'm wondering if it's just a permissions thing or not, is all of the libraries that your patrons have checked items out from. And so it would see a whole list of different libraries.
Like the ones that we brought in.
Mm-hmm. But
so, okay.
we can trial run the holds one and see how this works. Okay, so this one is just for total checkouts. Again, we're going to stay with exactly what we had in the items tab. Item statistical report, checkouts for the category. We're just going to leave it at active summary for this one, and then your library and the dates. Just I'm reminding you after every time, because I switch between screens and always forget to click this and go, why is that a 0? Oh yeah, I have to go back and click it. And then you hit submit, and you're probably going to see the same number. And then we can move on to the next one and see how this works for you. So you'll go to the holds tab and the hold statistical reports. Got there?
Yeah, cool.
So what number did you get for your total checkouts?
1440.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Probably gonna be the same one. And then for this one, which we're measuring satisfied holds, not requests or anything, we want to know what was actually checked out. So you're going to go into statistical categories and you're going to select hold satisfied item checked out to patron. It's a little bit further down on the list, but it's very long. Yeah. You're going to select your, it might not matter for you, but pick up location, because again, I wanted it to be picked up at your location. I would see if your patrons were going to other libraries. I don't know if you will. Then you're going to go into transacting library again, pick your library, and then go down into the date ranges, and you can put another just like hold dates between 1 year ago. That's just the easiest way of trial running this. If you wanted to have, like, let's say from all of 2022, you would do January 1st to December 31st in that above option, and then you'd pull for just between those 2 dates. Again, circle that little thing because now it's been checked off, and record that number. Permissions make all of this very fun.
So
okay.
One caution though that we have is it won't always necessarily add up like that.
Right.
Some of those extra ones that are not holds, it might not be all checkouts of your items, right? It might also be, Polaris also gives, all it does is a tick for this one.
Yeah.
So it gives you a tick when you renew something, and it also gives you a tick when somebody takes out a new resource. When one of your patrons takes out a new resource,
they're all counted as checkouts.
So those 4 things will add up to 100%.
Right.
Yeah, there's a couple of things going on in the checkouts number. So those are the main components of what makes it up. So the math's not perfect, but it's a good like estimation of what's happening. Yeah.
It's still a great way to say to your board, yes, I'm doing well.
Yeah.
So now, again, you can start setting your objectives for, maybe if you think that people would read more if they were bringing stuff in from other libraries, maybe your goal is to increase that number for you. If my goal as a library is to be a desirable place to be, I probably want to increase the percentage of checkouts from my library, because that means my patrons are standing in my library, browsing my shelves.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly.
So this is kind of also where your allocation of resources comes in. So again, if my goal is to make checkouts from my library number go up is my favorite game. If my goal is to do that, then maybe I want to be allocating my resources differently. And I think for most of our libraries, that tends to be staff time. You have a finite budget, you have finite staff time. And what a plan of service does is tells you, okay, if you have to take away staff time from something, this is where you put it. And if you need to take staff time away from something else in order to do this, this is your priority.
Right, yeah.
So my priority in this instance would probably be putting my staff time towards researching what kind of stuff my community likes and buying those things.
Which we will cover
And,
in our next.
You know,
report.
allocating more of my collections budget towards stuff that I am specifically picking out for my community, rather than maybe they don't like bestsellers. Maybe they only like best-selling romances. So how do you measure progress? Again, I talked about this a little bit, but basically progress is improvement over time. So you do want to give yourself time for this. So you can either measure this by having a specific goal. I want 50% of my checkouts to be from our shelves. Or you can say that you want that percent to have its own percent increase year over year. So this is slightly more complicated. It involves a little bit more math, but it can be a little more sustainable as a goal rather than giving yourself sort of that end 50%. So I can change from, so I'll say from 40% to 50% is a change of 10%, right? I've added 10%. But I can also, if I'm looking at those underlying numbers, a change from 40% to 50% is also a change of 20%. Because I have,
We
or
will be
sorry, change
sharing
by
these
20%.
slides with you, so
Yes.
you can look at this
Yeah,
afterwards.
So maybe I want a 20% increase in that number every year
right.
to get eventually to an overall of 50% of my checkouts being from my own shelves.
Okay, so to make that a little bit more manageable, because now you're probably thinking like, I need to get these numbers every year. A really easy thing that Simply Reports does is once you've ran that report, if you want to like hit submit on a report and do follow along, you can save the report parameters. You name them and then you hit save and it'll save exactly what you just designed, so you can continuously just run it. And you can actually schedule it to auto run for you. So if you go into my reports tab to my reports after, it'll only work once you've saved the parameters. So you'll have to run a report. Hit that little save button. I'll go back so
Yeah.
you can see it. Name it something that you can find easily. And you hit the little save.
And save report.
Oh, I should go back. Oh, where are we? Oh no. Yeah, it's a little
one there.
save
Okay.
report. Yeah. Okay, now that it's saved, you're going to go up into your tabs to My Reports. And then it's also called My Reports. It's just double My Reports. Did I?
Oh, schedule.
Okay, I missed a box, I think, when I was doing this, clearly.
Mine's
over
a
here.
little different.
You're going to scroll. No, I just forgot an image of this.
Oh.
You're going to scroll down into, I think you ran an item report, was it? Or is it a whole report? So you're going to go into either whole statistical reports or item statistical reports, whichever one that, oh, this one right there. There it is. Okay, I'll do the next step. So I can explain it to this recording. Once you're in My Reports, I will add to my slides a little box on the side that you scroll. You'll just scroll to the exact type of list or count or statistical report that you ran and saved, and you're going to click on it. And then it'll bring you to this page. So for this, you're going to click on the little box on the report, because after time you might add a couple of reports in there. You're going to find yours and you're going to check it off. And you can make the decision to run that report right now if you wanted to, or you can schedule it so that it auto runs on a certain day. So if you click schedule, it'll bring you to this screen. You have to give it another name. This is the name that's going to pop up when you go to find this report when it runs every single time. So you want it something descriptive, like checkout monthly or something like that,
Okay,
so that you know what it is that's being pulled. Otherwise, you're going to click on it and be like, what is this? Or holds monthly, whatever it is you're measuring. That might be holds yearly because we put a year date in there. Okay, and then for this, this is optional. You don't have to set any dates. It'll be preset to starting on today's date, whatever today's date is. And then but you can, like, if you want it to start a year from now, you can do that. Doesn't matter. And then you can put schedule expiration if you want that to finish in like a year or 2 years. And then you can go down into options and you can decide how often you want this to run. I'm just going to tell you, be mindful about running it on like a daily or weekly basis. You'll get a lot of reports and that can get overwhelming. So a monthly kind of running time is great, or you can select a specific date, but it's only going to run on that one date. So you have to kind of think about how much you want this to run. You want it running monthly or on like a date that you might have to reschedule.
okay. So this is actually saving now, right? This is my.
It'll save on your
Yes.
account.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll show you how you find the results once it actually does run. So
as
that
an
should be scheduled.
aside, my recommendation normally would be set your monthly one to about a week before your board usually has their meeting.
I'm gonna go back really quickly just for setting this up for like if you're gonna do a monthly way of going about this. This holds date between, I would put 1 month,
Yeah.
and then when you do monthly, it'll just pull for that month on the first.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you have those exact numbers.
Okay.
Makes it nice and clean and easy. Okay, pop back over to finding this thing, scheduling. Okay, so you're gonna go to file maintenance now under my reports.
Okay, so we're not saving this, are we saving this?
Oh, yeah, yeah, if you
Yes.
haven't saved already,
Okay, save it.
yeah, and now it's gonna run on every month. That'll give you yearly results, I think. That's what we had
Oh.
set, but that's okay. It's
Oh,
a
I
trial
have
run.
date Something,
Oh, let's,
because I put save and it says the start date of the report must be created.
Oh, it's been doing that, I think, since the time change. Or
maybe
something.
try just, go to the nice.
It's been, for some reason, it's been setting it to
There we
start
go.
on
Yeah.
yesterday.
Okay.
That's
now I'm going to
confusing.
find-
Yeah, it's been doing it to me
Yeah.
a lot.
Okay,
Oh,
and then
I don't have access.
you don't have file maintenance?
All right, let's change
Let's
that.
add. So if
Uh,
you don't have access to file maintenance to do this step, just let your consultant know and we will have to add that to your permissions, which we can do for you right now, Darcy. Ollie is just searching for your name in our little box.
Oh my goodness.
of
Yay,
doom.
I found it. That was less awful than it could have been.
The littlest checkbox.
Which one is it?
It'll be under saved reports. There we go, file maintenance. Great.
Perfect.
I wonder if we should just do scheduled maintenance too.
Yeah, there's no reason why
Because then
not.
she can edit the schedule. I don't have
Alright.
it shown here, but. All right, okay, so just finding it. I think you don't get a lot of options in this either. You just have a drop down menu, click scheduled reports. This will actually save like any reports you've ever ran. You can technically go back and download the results, but we're gonna go to schedule reports. Shouldn't show anything for you yet, but I don't have a picture of what it shows. It's just gonna be clickable links, just a bunch of them. You can delete them because they add up over time, but yeah, you just click it and it downloads as an Excel spreadsheet.
If you want to pull the one that you just did, rather than the one you scheduled, you would just go to ad hoc reports instead.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and then we're gonna try out maybe another question. So what other information might we need to create a desirable place to be? How about in-house items? You want to know if patrons are referencing material or reading in the library. So your library might not be collecting these specific statistics. If you'd like to start, you can ask your consultants. Usually it's just like a bin and then you use a specific checkout menu, which is already in the check. I think it's in, the
Yeah,
checkout.
it's in the check-in menu.
Check-in menu. I always mix those up, check-in, checkout. And it will tally it into the circ counts. So this question has how much. We're going to highlight that because that's a measuring thing.
Right.
We're going to highlight items because again, it's an item. We know what tab we're working under. And then in-house because that's a specific category that we want to look at. So that's going to lead us to count reports. The phrase how much indicates that we are trying to tally something, and counting just put count and tally together. We're counting data points within Polaris. So all of those total number of items, let's say that little form that I showed you, we're going to multiply that form by all of the items in your collection, and it's going to count each one of them. You're thinking like a computer a little bit. It's going to tally up circulation counts that get shown in the statistics of those items. And then you can measure them, which is super fun. So we're going to go into items, count reports. I'm just loving this arrow.
It's so cute.
Sorry, I had a lot of fun adding that arrow yesterday. Are you there? Got there, okay.
I'm expecting to go down, but really it's right there.
I know, I'm sorry,
Oh,
mine like
yeah,
really
yeah.
looks like it's down. I wanted to make sure that there is like two, sometimes they blur together and you miss them.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna do in-house account report. This one looks different and a little more detailed, but we're gonna go to that column out or report column, output columns, and we're gonna click on item assigned branch name. And then you're gonna use that little arrow in the middle there to bump it over to the next. Okay, and then you're gonna scroll all the way to the bottom, mostly to the bottom, it's alphabetical, but you're looking for some item YTD, which is year to date. So January 1st of this year to date, in-house use counts, previous year in-house counts.
Are we putting this all to the next?
Yeah,
Yes.
so one handy thing is you can click on one and use shift, and then if they're all in a row, or even control and individually select them and then put the arrow in, so you're doing a bunch at a time.
Okay.
I like to do things as fast and as efficiently as possible, so
Nice, slow and easy.
okay, whatever works for you, go at your own pace.
One at a time is also more precise.
It is.
Hey,
I
you
am
said
throw it
I
in.
missed one of those
Oh,
things.
no
And then
problem.
Some.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then.
lifetime. That one's a little up because it's alphabetical. And it doesn't, I like to organize mine like this. You can use the little up and down. You click on one of the options in the middle and then like use the up and down menu to organize how that's going to come out in columns.
Right.
I am very precise. You don't have to be, however you like that to fall. You're going to go into item general filters. So this one I did capture. I'm going to open that little guy up. And then should go back. When you're doing an item count report or an item list report, there are 2 to potentially 3 filters you're always going to set. One is your library. You have to pick that. It won't let you run a report without it. The next one is you're going to scroll down a little bit and you're going to find record status and you're going to click final. Otherwise, this is going to pull provisional and deleted items and it's going to throw off your numbers.
Right, and finals.
Yep. And then the next one you're going to do is circ status. And this one's a little bit more complicated because we want to get everything that isn't withdrawn. Otherwise, you're going to have a bunch of withdrawn items show up. And that again might throw your numbers. So you're going to check that off. And you're going to, while holding down shift, highlight all of the results in that box. You're going to like click, get them all. And then you're going to let go of shift and you're going to click down on the control and you're going to just select withdrawn so that it's the only thing not highlighted. Okay. Beauty. Oh, and then you hit submit and that's all you need.
So if you want to do in-house,
Yes.
again, in our imaginary scenario where I want to improve my libraries as a place to be, this is probably a good thing for me to do, a good procedure for me to start in my library. So basically, you would wander around when you're doing your closing cleanup or whatever you walk through, collect all the books lying around that patrons took off the shelves and didn't use. And then there's a special place in the check-in window. It's literally just an icon you click on and you check those in using in-house, the in-house.
You might want to just get like different colored bin.
Yeah.
So you know that this is your in-house bin.
So like, if you have the to shelf bins, that's what you would put through your in-house.
Right.
So if you don't know how to use this feature, talk to your consultant. It's actually super easy. Like literally, she can send you a screenshot and you'd know exactly what it was.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like measuring progress would literally be year over year as you take this report in. Are those numbers improving?
Mhm.
But it is an indirect way to use it because like, I don't know, there's a lot of reasons that people could be pulling out items from the shelves. Like I always think about the toddler that comes in and pulls every single board book and then sits in a pile.
Yeah.
So like, do be judicious. Like you don't necessarily have to put all of the toddler's pile into your in-house if you think that's not an accurate representation. I will say, an interesting way I like to look at this is you can add sorting by collection into a stat report like that. Is it a stat report? No, I think it's just a count report.
Probably just the count.
Either way, yeah, you can look at it anyway. You can look at it by collection. So like your
yeah, you
easy
do a
readers,
list.
your nonfiction.
Mm.
If you have a specific collection by your sitting area, like you have all of your nonfiction by your sitting area, and your in-house numbers for that collection are through the roof, probably it means people are sitting there and browsing through your nonfiction while they're sitting there. So it's a popular area.
Yeah.
Next, I think we can get a little bit more information, maybe another question on how to create or measure a desirable place to be. So one question is, when were my busiest times over the last year? And so measuring like how do you measure busyness really? And so you might be able to determine if there were long lineups or rushes right before closing. You might want to think about things like just, checkouts in general. So yeah, you have a huge lineup and it's busy, or you have a lot of patron registrations, let's say at a certain time or various times over the day. You can visually show that when those times are busy and whether or not people are coming in and actually doing these things. So let's break this down. When, it's a measure of time. Busiest, it's a measure of something, which we're going to figure out. And then over the last year. This one seems kind of vague. I usually tend to get to vague and go into statistical reports, because then I think statistics, patron registrations, maybe requesting holds. We can even measure that in these reports, because we can show, I'm not going to show it today, but we can get to the detail where you can say this request was made by you specifically, and it can show how many patrons are coming to you for you to help them make a request. So it's showing you doing reference work.
Oh.
It's time that you're putting towards creating a patron registration. I know this is Alia's talking point. Sorry, I'm gonna stop.
No, you go for it.
Okay, so the two reports that I'm taking as like measurements of busyness and time is total hourly checkouts and patron registrations. So we're going to go into items and then item statistical reports again, because it's a checkout. Checkout always means statistical report every time. And you there? Yeah, okay. And then we're going to go and do statistical categories checkout again, because it's the handiest. We are going to leave available subcategories as general, just that activity summary, but we're going to go down into report type now, and we're going to choose hourly because we want to break this down to every hour. And then I like to do detailed level, year, month, day, hour, so I know exactly when that is. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to tell where you're at in the data when it pops up. You're going to go and pick your library, and then you're going to pick a library date range as well, or the relative date. For trial running purposes, a year is good because then you actually get a significant amount of data. Okay, and then you're going to check the little box off again. I know, no, I forget every time. That's why I put this reminder on all of them for myself.
Honestly,
and
bless
for
you, because again, I missed that 3 times yesterday alone.
I know, I do it every time, and I was like, if I do that on this, it frustrates me. Oh, so you're gonna run that, and you're gonna get a spread, and it's gonna break it down by hour.
I'm submitting.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't take any picture of results because I didn't want to show, yeah. And we don't usually have stats for this kind of thing. So we don't do checkouts. And so you can kind of see a spread.
So this is one that's really, really nice to put into Excel and graph out.
Which we can definitely show at one point. I mean, we'll be showing a lot of Excel graphing. Okay, the next one we're going to do is patron registrations because these are time intensive. So you're going to go now to the patron tab and you're going to go into statistical report there. Okay, we're going to go into statistical categories and we are going to click on patron registration created. We're going to leave available subcategories as the defaults, but this time we're going to go into report type and we're going to break it down by hourly. And then we're going to go to detail level and do the year, month, day, and hour again. And then this gets repetitive, but you're going to pick your library and then your date range. If you're wanting to save these and run them monthly, I would suggest, I don't know if you're already doing this, doing your relative date as 1 month. And then you're going to get a monthly tally every single month. Yeah. Because then you don't have to worry about them at all. You just let them run and you can go and pull that data. Check off your little dude.
I sure didn't.
I know, I forgot to hit enter.
There you go.
I put a heart for a reason, just to be like, love. Everyone does it. So you can add that
So
to your
what is this
checkout.
telling me?
It's telling you how often patrons are coming in and getting their
So let's see here.
getting an account made for them.
So if you're looking, I use this one a lot for communicating about staffing, right? If I'm getting, I had one library who spiked about it during the hour after their big story time program.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they needed more staff on the desk. And you can use that spike to say, no, this is a peak time. And I mean, conversely, if you're working with no budget at all and you have to cut staff hours, you can also look at that and say, okay, Fridays from 5 to 6, we had 2 checkouts. I don't think anybody's really coming in. I think we can probably close at 5. And again, not all of those are created equal. Like I said, I would attach an actual number of minutes to those new memberships because those are taking you a lot more time than scanning out a book.
Yes, I just thought of something. That's
So yeah, like you've actually come up with a couple of different ways to measure progress already. Like I really like the idea of measuring the number of active patrons in a particular area to tell whether you are engaging your students and getting them to actually use their cards.
Yeah, I didn't even, I mean, just having this conversation brought that up as, it wasn't even something I had thought of initially as creating a desirable place to be. So just like measuring that engagement kind of aspect of it. You can shoot us an email and we can completely tell you how to get those numbers because we don't have them in here, but they're
Easy to
run.
get.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if my goal is to be a desirable place to be, that spike also tells me if that's just after that program, they're sticking around, right? They're not just coming to engage with, especially if I've got a partnership, they're not coming just to engage with the organization that I'm partnering with. They're sticking around at the library to actually use the library. So if more people are sticking around from month to month, that means I'm succeeding. Unless there's another really good reason for that number to spike.
Okay, we're going to move on to just an entirely new goal. Because now you have an idea of like how to ask different questions around a goal and like dig for that information now. And then like measure it, like you have a scope and milestones, all of those kinds of outcomes established. So this one, we're going to think about how to, or measuring whether or not you've engaged new communities. Maybe this is a goal that your board someday wants to give you. They're like, you know, we want to have a more diverse engagement. So how would you measure that? What information would you need? One is just to get a good baseline. Again, this is kind of for a milestone purpose. How many new memberships do we get each month? We've already kind of ran through this. So we're gonna play with this one a little bit more. So you know how to do it on an hourly basis. It's a fundamental question or answer report that's really easy to then tailor a bit so that you get more detailed information. So how many new memberships is the next one, and then each month. So how many is a count, although this one's a little bit of a trick because how many does say a count, and you could technically run this in a count report, but you can also run it in a statistical report. So it's easier to go through the statistical report because you can do a lot more with it. So, yeah, if you want to pop to next. Okay, so we're gonna go patrons statistical report. You might still be there. You might still have some of those parameters set. This one we're going to do quite similarly to the other one we just ran, which was an hourly. So we're going to do patron registered created. We're going to leave that activity summary as defaulted, but we're going to change the report type to monthly and the detail level to year and month. So this just is going to give us a tally every single month of how many patrons. It's a little more easy to read than the hourly one.
Right.
It's just going to show you a little bit different. Oh, and then you're gonna do the little
Run.
little reminder, and you can see what you get there.
So that gives you a really good baseline, because your imaginary board, if they want you to engage new communities, maybe wants you to, like, you will see those new community numbers in months other than September and October, because they will be outside the school.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, true.
So having that baseline, if you normally get 3, it also helps you set a realistic goal, because if you're getting 3 new members per month, increase by 33% is only asking you to get 1 new member. But saying we want 20 new members every month is not a very realistic goal either.
Mhm.
So if you start with the numbers you already have when looking at a goal, instead of sort of pulling one out of the air, I've seen that happen when they base it sort of off the town's population.
Mhm.
But start with where your library is rather than where your town is.
Yeah, we want you to succeed, not like cry and like be frustrated because you haven't been able to reach this kind of unreachable goal. Arbitrary numbers are never useful.
No.
Mhm.
So realistically, we have between 1 and 3. Almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
So
And if you wanted
Except
to
for
be
that September and October, like, I didn't
ambitious.
even count the September and
Yeah.
October, because those are students, probably,
Mhm.
or maybe parents.
And these are
Right.
new people. This isn't
Yes.
checkouts or anything and people coming in. These
Yeah.
are new people coming to your library.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
that's actually, yeah, that's
Mhm.
really healthy.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
new memberships do mean you're getting brand new people. And again, like we talked about, your renewing members aren't going to show up in this report. And so it depends on what my goal is, what I'm measuring. If I wanted, again, to measure that goal of desirable place to be, I'd probably actually want to be measuring renewing patrons, because that means they're coming back again and again.
Is a slightly more difficult report. to
Yeah,
do,
it's a
so-
little more indirect.
Mhm.
Right.
So this one's a much easier one. But you will, like, keep in mind, is your community growing or is your community declining? Give yourself realistic goals.
So this
Um,
one, again, it was really a really great point that Alia made in looking at those patrons, because we're wanting to engage new communities. So you're engaging new people, and it's outside of school, like flux time. So yeah, I mean, you could point towards that being not necessarily students, which is great because you are servicing the community in general as well.
Right.
So, and the other part of that is like if you're doing, like, with Leap and stuff, you can literally go out with your iPad and sign people up at, your craft fair or whatever.
Yeah.
If you do that in a particular month and you can see it spike, that's a really good argument for getting extra staff hours to go do that outreach for another year.
Okay, so what else might we need to figure or measure how to engage, or if we are engaging new communities? So which groups, we're going to use groups generally, are getting the most new memberships? Maybe we can get this a little more detailed. So which groups, most new memberships? This is leading us back to patron statistical reports. But we're going to change this one up a little bit. We're going to stick with the patron registration created, but we're going to go to available subcategories and we're going to go by patron code. This might give you some stuff. This might not. It depends on how your patrons are getting their cards registered.
Right.
We're going to go to report type, general, and detail level, not applicable. Just leave those as default. And then your library and a date range. So this is going to be fully dependent on what type of codes your library uses. You might use a lot of standard. That is quite often what happens, but some libraries use family. They'll do adult, child. There's a code for print disabled patrons, which I will show how to pull. And then you can just see a little bit better of a spread.
So yeah, like so now you have this already. If you want more detailed data in there, you would change your procedures to put in different patron codes for different groups you want to measure.
So where is that information? What is the patron codes? Which ones are they?
When you are registering a patron, it'll tell you to choose a patron code. I think it's almost always defaulted on standard.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what most of the libraries already have. But it's a little drop down menu.
Oh, is that where it says like institutions?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So an
Okay.
institution would be a patron code as
Right,
well.
I must say.
If you want.
I do change ages, so like.
Okay, so we will get to that one next
Okay.
because we can pull that. But if you want to capture, so this is where now you can start thinking about your behavior in entering data, because you can go, wait, I want to capture like family or whatever else, an adult child in this area. You don't have to.
Yeah.
But you can then like you can know what you'll get when you're pulling that data. It's just, yeah.
Or
You don't
for
have to,
it
you might
might
want to.
be student, right? School
Yep.
student.
Yeah.
And then you can really specify the difference between a standard card is community member, student card is student, and then they can have the same borrowing limits, but it's a way for you to figure out.
Okay.
If you want to, you don't have to.
No.
There are suggestions.
No.
I think you managed to do this without me doing the reminder, so that's super great.
Yeah.
I forget to even put the reminder up there. I'm so great at not clicking this button.
So we got through what you have already. Let's
Oh,
go, just so to get a little more into this, if you already have a lot of young families coming in for story time or something, maybe you're going to need to change your behavior in marketing. So the other part of this, again, with the allocation of resources, knowing who's already using your library for you, the students, means you also know who you don't need to target when you're thinking about marketing.
Right, true.
Or for example, if I'm doing marketing on social media, it's very unlikely that the seniors are going to see it, and that will probably reflect in my numbers.
And then you might want to think of another way to engage.
So then I have
This is always the tricky part.
then I'd have to figure out if I could reallocate my staff time to doing that marketing, or do I have to figure out another solution? Because it's honestly, it can be a bit of a thankless job. So honestly, sometimes seeing number go up is your most satisfying.
Hey,
Some motivation.
I do.
So we've
That's
kind of
amazing.
gone over
Good
this
data.
already, but again, you can talk about this as, well, we had 5 brand new members in this category last year. This year we had 10. That's a 100% increase because it is doubles.
Okay, let's try out another thing. What else can we get? Which age groups? So, which age group? We're gonna do checkouts this time. And items is in there, so it's a trick question. I didn't highlight items. This one we can technically pull out of the items or patrons tab, but because we're dealing with age groups and thus people and patrons, we're going to work out of the patrons tab and statistical reports. And for the patrons statistical reports, you can also do checkout. So we're going to choose that one for the statistical category. And then you're going to use by patron statistical class in the available subcategory. And then you are going to leave general summary and the detail level as default. You're going to choose your library, which apparently I highlighted all of them instead. And then you are going to, I'm just sorry, select a date range.
If your goal is to reach these new communities, you have to know what their habits are already. So you've already given us a perfect rundown of what the habits of your existing communities are, backed up by those numbers. You know who's most active, you know who's missing. And you also know, again, that targeting already heavy users like those elementary school kids isn't going to give you nearly as much progress, nearly as much number go up as, for example, I would probably, if I just wanted my numbers to go up, I would probably target the 0 to 5s because they're the ones that are going to be taking enormous stacks of level graders and stuff. Once you've identified who you want to go with, and I think from what you've said, you probably want to go with your teenagers.
Yeah.
Then you would measure your progress by seeing if those checkouts are increasing either month to month or sort of month to month, year over year, if that makes sense. So from this January to next January, right? Because sometimes, like we talked about February, we had that cold snap. Okay, are we getting better numbers for this group in just February? That will give us a better idea than perhaps year over year, or even from February to March. So,
okay, we got one final goal that we're going to break down. And this one, kind of along the lines of the other two, but a little bit different, is creating an inclusive environment. So, what information might we need? What do we want to know? Honestly, you might want to just figure out who do you need to include. Are you offering accessible services? Are patrons accessing these services? So I'm going to start with just how many print disabled patrons you have, or well, it will be you have because you're the only one pulling the reports right now. And if you have any new ones, because you can measure this and then again measure progress. So how many is accounts, print disabled patrons, and because we're not measuring anything new, we are just measuring how many we actually have right now. That's going to indicate a count report. And then we have the next question, that is, do we have any new, which then will put us to the statistical report for that time-based one. So how many print disabled, patron count report, total patrons by patron code, and then any new print disabled patrons goes to that statistical report. Registrations created, patron code, which we are really good at doing now. We're going to go to the patrons tab again, and this time we're going to go to the patron count report. Okay. And you were going to go into columns selected for output, or sorry, into the report output columns, and then you're going to move into columns selected for output, patron branch name and patron code. I like to sort by patron code. You don't have to. It depends on how many patron codes you're anticipating. If it's not many, then don't worry about it because it's not going to sort a lot. And you're just going to hit submit. Oh, you're going to, sorry, not hit submit. I am getting ahead of myself. You're going to go into the patron general filters. I'm going to open up that one there. You're going to choose your assigned branch as your branch. And then you hit submit, and it'll give you a count of all of the patrons within your library in the different patron codes. Okay, so the next one is registrations created, because now we want to see new. How many new patrons are we getting that are potentially, let's say, print disabled? You can do this in statistical class as well if you want to do age group, but we're going to do patron registration created again by patron code. And then we're going to go to monthly for report type and the detail level. You can do year and month. I have month shown here. I really usually like having the year there just so I can orient myself in place and time, particularly if I'm using a 1 year relative date, because then I'm getting usually 2 years worth of, for like a 2022, 2023 spread. And choose your library and your date. Click the little box, or oh, never mind, sorry, we're gonna open up patron statistical report filters.
Oh, right.
Because I want to, this one you don't have to do this, because again, it depends on how many patron codes you are using. If you don't have a really big spread, it's not going to be anything insane, but to look at visually. But if you really want to just see for that specific patron code, you can go down and highlight patron code and then select the one you want to view. I have print disabled because that was our question. So you can see how many every single month you're getting print disabled. This is a really handy one if you ever get the self-registration created, because that'll be a patron code. You can see how many people are signing up online. Click your little box and then hit submit. You might have 0 because you don't have the patron.
I have no
Yeah.
patron staff, makes sense, right?
Yeah, but
That
just
ties
in and of itself.
in, yeah, that ties into, like, now you know what you have. And if my goal is to create an inclusive environment, I need to know if I have print disabled patrons designated in Polaris. Since you don't, if you want inclusive environment to be your goal, maybe your goal is to ensure existing, print disabled patrons have the designation and that they know what's available to them. So part of your goal for that might be to take some Nelson Sela training, right? There's also, especially for your kids, there's extraordinary resources out there for them.
Yeah.
So if you don't have them, then, you know, there's some stuff like the Daisy Talking books or the Braille that they can just access. Or if you had some, but they're not active, maybe they just didn't know what was going on, right? If you have these patrons registered and never taking anything out, maybe they are print disabled and not taking out books because they don't know they can take out anything else. Or maybe they know you have those collections and you don't have what they want. So maybe you need to look at what specific stuff's in your collection. And in a library your size, you know your community well enough to probably know which of those it is. So from year to year, if you're measuring your progress on this, are you getting more new print disabled patrons? So either you're attracting more new print disabled people into your library, or you're adding those into Polaris, which is still a win because it means you are now adding all of that accessibility to their already existing library accounts. And again, either one of those, I think, is a win when you're communicating to your community.
Okay, so we're gonna do one final question. We want to figure out inclusive environment. I'm thinking of things now that, I mean, if you have accessible items, you might want to see if once you purchase them and you've, maybe marketed them in a way that attracts people to be like, oh, hey, I didn't know you had this.
Yeah.
I suddenly like, this is very useful for me. You might want to see how that performs. See if you're actually, connecting with people. So my question would be, how many different formats do we have? Which of these formats are most popular? You can see things like large prints, whatever you have entered in there. So we have a count here with how many. We have formats, so that is a category that we're going to pull for. And then we have which formats are the most popular. So this is indicating which sometimes and most popular indicates checkouts. So this is 2 reports. One is accounts and one is a statistical report. So we're going to start off with the count report and we're going to do items by material type. So we're going to go back into items and we're going to go into the count report. Okay, and then we're going to select for our columns for output item assigned branch name and then the item material type. You can sort by my item material type. It'll do it alphabetically. It's just I find it far more easy to read. You don't have to. I like things orderly. Yeah. Okay, and you're going to open up that little item general filters because we have to apply those specific filters for this report, which is your branch name.
Right.
And then it is record status, final. And then it is that circ status with the highlighting all of them using shift and control to deselect withdrawn. Because we don't care about what is going on with withdrawn items at this point. And now you are going to hit submit and you're going to see what your tally is. Get an idea of your what you currently hold anyways. You probably have mostly books, but a lot of people mostly have. All right, so we are going to go back and click off checkout for our statistical categories because this is excellent for showing busyness and popularness. Like, how do I say this word? And then we're going to go to available subcategories and we're going to go to item material type. Leave the next 2 categories as the defaults and then select your library and a date. Okay, click that little box. Got it. Honestly, so easy to forget. And see what you got. Hit submit. We've talked a lot about this one already, but
Yeah. So like for you, large print's not going crazy. But another way you can look at this is you can ask Joe or a consultant to figure out for you what formats in track are really popular. And if you want to add a new collection, you can do it that way as well. You can use that inventory to say, okay, well, I don't have a Daisy talking book collection, but those are going crazy in track right now. Maybe I want one. So again, there's kind of 2 different ways you can do this. If you want to increase your use of a particular collection, see if you can increase your circulations per item there. So you would use both of those reports, that count report we did and the circulation report.
Okay.
And you would divide your number of items by, no, sorry, circulations divided by items, number of items. And that's, of course, circulations per item per year, because that's how long you put that
Right.
circulation in. So every year, on average, each item in that collection goes out 1.2 times or whatever. That's actually a fairly healthy number. So if you're starting a new one, then you want to look if your collections or if your circulations are increasing. Again, you could do month over month from, say, February to March, or you could do from February 2023 to February 2024, might be a fairer comparison. So we've talked about this a little already, but basically when you're adding or editing item records, if your data that you're putting in, it's the way I always heard it described was GJO, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't put stuff in that you're going to be able to reliably use, then you're not going to get good data.
and vice versa. And well, like not vice versa, but
you have influence over what data goes in, and like let's say we're talking about statistical codes, or classes, and then patron codes, you can influence that if you want to actually have certain, detailed levels of data that you pull.
Yeah, true.
So if you want to know more about your patrons, you put more information about your patrons into their records and now you pull it. And so when you're looking at this, there can also be consequences for unclean data. And this is a little, so getting called out for incorrect data will affect you a little less without a board.
But with
But
a board.
If you're a library with a board and you're putting out this information and somebody else checks it or whatever, and they go, that seems wildly inaccurate, they're never going to trust. It's boy who cried wolf. They're never going to trust you. Also, if you do your own insurance, and
Right.
mostly the libraries that are in schools have the schools do theirs.
Yeah.
But if you do your own insurance and they're asking you for evaluation of your collection, if you've misscanned a barcode and now your collection's valued at $3 million or whatever,
And you don't catch it somehow.
not only is that technically potentially fraud, but also, do you really want to pay the premiums on a $3 million collection that doesn't exist?
Yeah.
So
Be careful with the data.
Yeah.
It is sacred.
if it doesn't look right, give us a shout, because maybe it isn't. Like we've had that actually even with annual reports recently.
And we can
Like-
double check.
If it doesn't look right, you're probably right. You know your collection.
Double check and investigate. Okay. Do you have any questions? We've made it to the end.